point in time is turn it over to Mr. Palumbo and ask him to say hello to everybody.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. As Joyce indicated, my name is Joe Palumbo. I am the proud principal of Pleasantville High School. We are thrilled to welcome the students and the families of the class of 2027 to Pleasantville High School. We've scheduled and worked to develop a comprehensive transition plan that includes several touch points. Our first one will be this evening. We look forward to seeing students next week on Thursday during the school hours, and adults, parents, guardians, the people that our children live with in the evening for a night event. Truly, it's going to be an exciting process. I'm sure there is a little bit of stress involved in this if you are new to the high school. I can assure you that each and every one of our team members will work closely with you and your family to make sure that you have the best possible transition to Pleasantville High School, and that each and every one of your children will find success at Pleasantville High School. We cannot wait to celebrate their talents and put them in the best position possible to shine as high school students. With that, I'm very confident in my school counseling team. I'm happy to turn it over to Ms. Connell, who's planned an excellent program with her team for you this evening. Thanks for introducing me, Joyce.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Palumbo. So I first want to also introduce the members of this evening's program, and I'll start with the middle school as well as our social emotional learning counselor who works in K through 12. So starting left to right, we have Miss Flatley, and I'm sure many of you have seen her in the middle school. She'll be sharing some information later about the work she's been doing in the middle school and what she works and does in the high school. And she's also been very, very involved in the work that's now starting to take place in the elementary school. So we are so glad to have her here this evening. Hi, Miss Flatley. We also have Miss Pamela Roth and Sue Leiden. Now, Sue is here this evening because she is the 8th grade counselor, and I'm sure many of you know Sue. And then there are those of you who may also know Pam if you have a child in, I believe it's 5 and 7, right, Pam? I mean, Sue. So thank you so much. Those are the middle school counselors. In the high school, we have a larger team. Each student has a counselor throughout the 4 years. You'll hear a little bit later on about that process. Cheryl Thomas, who's in the upper left deck of the photo, is unable to attend this evening, but she says her hellos and she can't wait to see the students next week. There's me in the middle, and to my right is Rebecca Castellano. And then on the lower view of the picture is Megan Bradley and Allison Winston. So I'm very happy to have them all here this evening. And we'll start the program with Miss Leiden, who will tell us what's been happening over in the middle school.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Connell. Good evening, everyone, and welcome 8th grade parents. It's nice to see so many attending tonight's webinar. As Mrs. Connell said, my name is Sue Leiden. I know many of you. I've had the pleasure of being your child's counselor for the past 4 years. Last week, we held advisory sessions with the entire 8th grade, and I was joined with Mrs. Connell. Mrs. Connell joined in. We reviewed the transition to high school timeline so that all the students would have an idea of what to expect. We talked about elective requirements and choices for PE, art, and music, as well as the importance of balance between academics and extracurricular. We did spend a lot of time talking about that. I explained to the students what a transcript is, as well as what GPA stands for. We discussed some honors classes and AP classes, what they are. And I shared with the students that we didn't expect them to have a grasp of everything we were talking about, but we wanted them to be familiar with it so that going forward, they'll say, oh yeah, I remember when she was talking about that. We then spoke to the kids about next week's orientation at the high school, where they'll meet with administrators and counselors, take a tour of the building, have a Q&A with peer leaders, and then make their elective selections with the assistance of the high school counselors. And I will be there as well at the orientation. We'll go over in 3 different groups. So it'll be pretty much the day, a good part of the day that I'll be bringing students over to the high school. The 8th grade teachers will be submitting their course recommendations for their students the beginning of March. Then portals will be available for parents and students to see what their teachers have recommended for them in the 9th grade. Next week, I will meet with all the kids. I'll push into their flex classes to let them know how to access the student portals. Up until now, as I know you're well aware, the students have used Schoology to access their classes, grades, assignments. So after next week, they'll be able to access their student portals so they can see what classes they're recommended for and other information that will be posted there. I'll also next week distribute to the students the electives form. We showed it to them during the advisory. I'll pass it out next week. The students are welcome to bring that form with them to the orientation on Thursday. No worries if they don't have it. We'll have additional forms on Thursday. And again, we'll help the kids fill it out. But we're trying to increase the number of times that they see the information and they hear the information. So they will come home with that sometime next week. And then finally, for the month of March, families and students are invited to schedule virtual meetings with their high school counselor if you so choose. And I think that's pretty much it. So thank you very much. I'd like to now turn the platform over to Mrs. Castellano.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name is Rebecca Castellano, and I am thrilled to be here to speak to you a little bit about the work that we will be doing with your students regarding the freshman electives. So as mentioned before, Mrs. Connell and Mrs. Leiden have already spoken to students about some of their choices. And when they spoke with the students, they also shared this form, which we're going to share with you. Now, you all should have gotten a copy of this form in an email from Mrs. Connell when she introduced what was going on here. So this is the form that we will be working with the students when they come into the high school. So my colleague Allie will be talking about courses and graduation requirements, when what happens where. Part of the freshman schedule will include an elective. An elective is a class of choice. It's that complement to the English, math, science, social studies, and world language, along with your PE. And that's the first choice students have to make in high school. What kind of PE? So you'll see at the top of the choice that students are given a choice. We have explained what those differences are. And in a nutshell, one is for the individual, fit for life, and the other is about playing team sports. And we'll give them more examples and more information about that when we meet with them. The next piece is that conversation that Mrs. Leiden talked about in terms of study hall. We do encourage the use of the study hall, especially in the first term and the first year in 9th grade. Moving from middle school to high school is a huge adjustment in terms of responsibility and often rigor. Sometimes students are taking on 1 or 2 honors classes and they need a little bit more time for study, or they need a little bit more time to organize. And a study hall is a great way of doing that. And then we get to the bigger one down here, the electives. Elective, like I said, was choice. Electives are chosen by students. We encourage picking an art elective in freshman year because we'd like students to knock out a graduation requirement early on in the career. At the same time, we respect that some students may want to try different options that are available in the high school, and that's why we make them available on this form. If you see what we're doing here, it's a breakdown in the columns. What we're looking for is a student to take 1 credit worth of elective choice. A class that meets for a full year will receive a full credit. A class that meets for a half a year receives half a credit. So, as you'll see in the first column, those first columns are all classes that traditionally meet for a full year. You have band, chorus, orchestra, advanced jazz band. That's something that you would need to kind of audition for and work with Mr. Vertagey on. The drama class. And then you have that studio art class. That's a full year studio art class. So it's a little bit of all the arts, and it's for that student who's really interested in the arts, somebody who wants to do a little bit of all of the arts for a full calendar year. And then we also have music theory. So it's learning about how to read and write music. And there are two parts to that. Student can take one part, the student can take two parts. Music theory is alternating every other year. So we would sit and have that conversation with the student. Now, those full year classes, especially the chorus and the band, have the opportunity to alternate days if a student is involved with both chorus and band. So if we move over to the second column, you'll see that these are our half year electives. So just like chorus, it meets all year, but with the student who would like to do both chorus and band, what we'll do is alternate the days. Just like the middle school, the high school has A, B, C, D, E days. So some students will take band ACE, or they'll take chorus ACE and band BDF. Dovetail together, that gives you your full credit of performing arts, which is a graduation requirement and a great way of spending an elective. For other students who want to do art, but don't want to devote a full year of a studio experience, then we go ahead and have them pick that Studio 1. There's also ceramics and a couple of other choices within the arts. When you move into that last column, that last column speaks to the other electives that we have available within the building for freshmen. There's the TV video production course, which is a very popular elective in that it is the one that produces the Daily Panther, which is our morning announcement show, and is shown every homeroom every single day. So students will learn how to produce it. They will do the announcements. They'll do the special effects for it. They might be doing some interview work. So it's a fun hands-on course. And then lastly, we have our Project Lead the Way Introduction Computer course, which is Computer Essentials. What we ask students to do is identify their top two choices. In a perfect world, they get these top two choices. In a not so perfect world, which is the world that I often live in, they won't get their top two choices, although we'll try to make those work. What we're really going for is making sure that they're in the right academic program. And if their elective choices don't fit perfectly, we want to be able to still allow them to have a voice, which is why we ask them to list at least 4 alternates. So you'll see your top 2, and then you'll see the alternate choices down below. We ask that students please give us an idea of what other courses they would like so that they're not feeling as if they're just being plugged into something. As always, we'll work with you and your student to make sure they know what their options are. This is a lot of information, and we invite you to have those conversations with us, and we will go through it again in detail with your students when we meet with them again next week. For those of you who are curious to learn more about what actually happens in those electives, the following form will give you that information. This too was emailed to you when the elective form was emailed to you. And these are just brief summaries about what these courses are and what students can expect to do within those classes. So those are those top 2 forms. And then lastly, if you're curious to learn about our programming from beginning to end, we have the Pleasantville High School course directory. This gives you information about every course that we offer in the high school, in addition to any specialized programs that we have as well. Some students want to learn about how to be the salutatorian and valedictorian. That's information in there. We give you course descriptions for all the cores as well as all of the electives. And we invite you to take a look, read about them, and ask questions. It's great stuff to look at in a way so that you can plan ahead. Freshman year is just the start, and we look forward to working with you guys for the next 4 years. So I'm going to turn this over to Allie Winston.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Allie Winston. I'm one of the high school counselors. I'm going to go over the graduation requirements that students must obtain in order to get a Regents diploma over the 4 years that they are at Pleasantville High School. So students are required to earn a total of 22 credits in addition to passing 5 Regents exams with a grade of 65 or above. And these credits must be earned in certain subject areas, and those include 4 credits in English, 4 credits in social studies, 3 credits in math, 3 credits in science, a world language credit, and students can go on and proceed to take more world language credits. We'll get into that later. A half credit in health, 2 credits in PE or physical education, 1 credit in fine arts, which can be art or music, and electives, depending on how many world language credits they take, could be 1.5 to 3.5 credits to equal a total of 22 credits. And typically students will earn more than 22 credits, as we require students in grades 9 through 11 to maintain a total of 6 credits per year. So students typically graduate with more than 22 credits. So in those special circumstances where a student may be exempt from a world language credit, they would have to earn an additional elective credit to get to the total of 22 credits. This may sound like a lot, and I don't mean to overwhelm anyone. However, the typical freshman schedule will include one of each of the core academic requirements. So in English, a social studies, a math, a science, a world language, an art or music, a study hall, a lunch period, and also a science in high school has an attached lab, which, as you know, we mentioned PE, we try to arrange that so they alternate each other. That is just about 9 periods in the day. So the students, although this may seem like a lot, it's worked out in a way where it's balanced, and we work together with families and meet every single year to make sure that it is appropriate and balanced for the student, and that they're able to achieve not only New York State graduation requirements, but what's appropriate for them and prepares them for moving on to their next steps. Feel free to answer any questions into the Q&A as we move along through this program. Also, I just want to reiterate that we're giving you a lot of information, and these graduation requirements and a lot of the other information may seem a little bit overwhelming. We're going to go over this with you every single year and make sure, and the counselors will ensure that, you know, that students are meeting all of their requirements, that they're on track, and reassure them that they're doing everything that they need to be doing. So I will now turn it over to Ms. Megan Bradley.
Thanks, Ms. Winston. So I'm Megan Bradley. I am one of the school counselors. So, you know, although your children are in 8th grade now, the freshman transition process is already beginning. And, you know, we're really excited to meet them next week when they come to the high school. So at the beginning of 9th grade, right, the day before, usually day before school starts, we have the freshmen come in for freshman orientation. So this is run by our excellent peer leaders. We train them. They are upperclassmen at Pleasantville High School. So they really know the school well. They know all the tips and tricks, and they're really great with our students. So we love having them run this day because it really introduces the 9th graders to Pleasantville High School. So this orientation day consists of some activities, some icebreakers. They get a full tour of the building, and will then, you know, get their locker assignments. They'll also go through their schedule. So they will have their schedule by that point. So they'll be able to go to all their classes and meet with all their teachers. So usually it's about 5 to 10 minute periods in an abbreviated schedule. So they'll be able to get comfortable, you know, making their way around the building and getting to know their teachers before they start on the first day. That's not where we stop though. So, you know, continuing on from freshman orientation, we really continue to work on the adjustment with them throughout the year. So the peer leaders stay involved the whole year. You know, it's great having them because They help us with our programming, but they also are friendly faces in the hallway that it's great for ninth graders to kind of feel comfortable going to. So we do have, we have a fall social. We meet with them, consistently for academic progress. And we also have advisory, which I'm going to let Ms. Flatley speak a little bit more about. But this is where we do a lot of our counseling program, kind of leaning towards social emotional, and also a strengths quiz on Naviance, which for those of you who don't know Naviance, it's a platform that we use for career and college planning. And yes, ninth graders still use it. We often use it for strengths and, leading to potential careers in the future, or interests and passions, kind of getting to know the student so that we can help them and cater their high school journey to what they're interested in. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Flatley, and she can speak more about the wonderful work she does in advisory. And if you have any questions, again, please put them in the chat. We're happy to answer them.
Thanks, Ms. Bradley. Hello, class of 2027 families. I'm Marianne Flatley. I'm a counselor dedicated to social and emotional learning district-wide. As Mrs. Leiden referenced earlier in the program, in the middle school, students are familiar with quarterly advisories where students are able to discuss relevant issues within the school and also just like related to life. The current 8th grade is also in a really unique and kind of wonderful situation in that they are a class that has received universal dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT classes since 5th grade. So they've had those classes through their health class in every year of middle school, which is great. For those of you who may not be familiar, DBT is a therapeutic approach that has been adapted to a universal classroom curriculum, and lessons, as I said, are taught in health. Some of you might be familiar with DBT from your own personal life, may have had some information through Dr. Amara's newsletters. Maybe we have met at different times to talk about these skills. Really, they can be thought of as life skills. Developing self-awareness, that was something that Ms. Bradley was just talking about in terms of like identifying strengths, developing identity, which is really so important in the teen years, helping students to identify emotion, regulate feelings in a healthy way, really to help students navigate more complicated relationships, decision-making. So again, really life skills. So when the class of 2027 enters Pleasantville High School, in addition to our orientation program that Ms. Bradley just spoke about, students will also be participating in monthly advisory classes. Now in the high school, we go through English and social studies. These are classes that will help with transition to high school really throughout the school year. So they begin in September and end in June. And we'll really be able to, I work with students to be able to really continue to help them develop these DBT skills and really apply these skills to what's happening, in their life as a Pleasantville High School student. So for example, this month, the current 9th grade, the advisory lesson discussion will be about, in DBT, what we call making wise minds decisions, really related to creating their academic program and their schedules for next school year. It's really important, as Mrs. Leiden mentioned earlier, that she and Mrs. Connell spoke to students about in their advisory. Really maintaining that balance is so important. Academics, extracurriculars, really pursuing interests, things that bring them joy, social relationships, all of that balance is so important as we really support the needs of the whole child at Pleasantville High School. We are really excited to welcome the class of 2027 next week, and then again in September. And please never hesitate to reach out to me directly if you ever have any questions, or if I can help you at all in any way. Thank you. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Connell.
Thank you so much. I am just going to switch over to the next slide. So, one of the things that we find very important and absolutely essential is keeping an open line of communication between families and the school. We're very fortunate. Our principal sends out weekly updates, and he includes information and happenings that are going on in the building and in the district. Oftentimes, he'll take the information that, we're also sharing out with families and piggyback it on his weekly update as well. We have a very robust high school website. If you go into our counseling links, you'll see there's an assortment of resources and additional information for students, everything from college and planning and financial aid, SAT scores, and getting jobs, different types of things that students can use throughout the 4 years. So I do encourage families to play around on the website and poke and touch and open up different links and really get a chance to see what's out there. But I also do a number of email notifications throughout the year. I try not to abuse this privilege because I do realize how full our mailboxes can be. I'll send out notifications about grade level programs and presentations similar to the one that we're having this evening. Any enrichment opportunities, any timely notifications or announcements, just so that families are kept in the loop. We also have created a Schoology course for each grade level. So all of the students in grade 9 next year will have a class of 2027 Schoology course, and that's where we will submit all of our documentation for the freshman class. Parents also have access to that as well, and you'll see any of the information that we're posting and sharing with those students. The parent and student portals are accessible through eSchool data. And as Ms. Leiden had mentioned, in the middle school, it sounds like not often is the eSchool data used. In the high school, we still continue to use that as a means of communicating academic progress. We have our report cards posted quarterly, and we update transcripts twice a year. So in January and then again in June. So it's real important for students to access their transcript and make sure everything is accurate and they know how they stand academically in terms of their grades and their GPA and, how their courses and Regents exams look. Parent conferences are something counselors also can coordinate. Sometimes we might start the conference through maybe teacher concerns or a student asking us to kind of gather a group of people together on their behalf. And then there are times where families will call and ask us also, can we meet together as a team? And the counselors will often coordinate that during our activity period, which is a 40-minute period at the end of the day that all faculty are present for. So that's a wonderful opportunity, especially for those in the beginning of the year who are looking to share with the team of teachers nuances and information regarding their child. New this year, Megan Bradley has introduced us to Instagram. And so we have an Instagram account. So any of you who would like to become a member of our Instagram account, you can just use that information at Pville Lower #school counseling, and you will be able to get onto our feed and we'll post again, information that's timely to what's happening in the counseling office. But more important than any of these communication opportunities is the telephone. And we do encourage parents to give us a ring. We certainly will be calling you if we feel the need, and we look forward to having an honest, open 4-year communication regarding, the best that we can be for your child. At this point, I'm going to open up the presentation to some questions. I do see that there's a few in the Q&A. I'm going to ask my team if they wouldn't mind opening up their screens also so that we can get a quick peek at everybody again. And just see what's out there. So one question says, will all different types of after-school clubs be available and listed for students to choose from? And Would students be able to create a new club if there is one that doesn't exist? So, Mr. Palumbo, I'm going to throw that to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And each year we talk to students about introducing new clubs and activities at the high school. We host a club fair a few weeks after the school year begins. We use the library, the courtyard, the cafeteria, all the clubs set up tables, and each year we end up introducing new clubs. I think a popular club this year that was somewhat new is our Yo-Yo Club. Some students reintroduced a video game club that had been dormant, for a few years. So we encourage students each year, just to let us know if they have an interest and there isn't a current club that exists. And then we look to connect students with their classmates and capitalize on those opportunities after school. The clubs typically meet either during activity period or directly after activity period. And the one thing I would say about clubs is that they're very fluid, because the students are involved in them. They really develop the schedule. They use Remind and other tools to share information about with each other about when they're going to meet. So I would encourage your student to get involved, to go to that club fair when it's hosted in early September, to sign up to become a member of a club, and to reach out to myself, Mr. Fondy, a counselor. We can help them put a new club in motion if they have an interest.
Thank you. The next question is, can students elect to have a study hall every other day, and can they take an additional half credit elective? So, Ms. Winston, how do you feel about taking that one? Up, you're on mute. Sorry.
I apologize. So this will depend on the type of elective. Students can certainly have a study hall every other day if they're choosing to do, say, an elective such as chorus, band, or orchestra, where they do have the opportunity to take that every other day for a full year, which would equate to a half credit, and then could have the study hall opposite that class. Those are really the only options in terms of doing the alternating study hall for the full year. If I'm missing any other electives, I don't believe so. Oftentimes, when we're trying to make courses fit into a schedule, sometimes that may be a science lab that's alternating with the study hall. So it really depends on how course requests will fit in the master schedule. But in terms of electives that students have requested, I think it really would come down to just the music, the band, orchestra, chorus electives that could be every other day, alternating the study hall every other day. Am I correct in saying that, Mrs. Connell?
Yeah, like I said, the only other time might be is a gym and a lab if they don't perfectly dovetail. Sometimes we like them to line up during the same period. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work that well. So sometimes the student may have a gym and a study hall, or a lab and a study hall. So that can happen that way, but it's not really something somebody elects to do, but it does happen. I do want
just one quick mention. Sometimes it has happened with drama that way. It's not ideal because drama class is something that you really want to be in daily, but it has happened when needed. And again, it's usually up against those PE classes or those lab classes. So that's just something to be aware of.
Yeah, so I do want to come back to this form only because I know there was a question regarding the computer science electives. Ms. Castellano, can you just speak to the credit option? Because I do believe it was in the half-year electives column, so.
Right. So it was listed on your other half-year elective options. And so the Computer Essentials is, you'll see the 1.0 credit. I'm sorry that it was confusing. It is a full year course. And it is the first of 4 Project Lead the Way courses. So that is the one that we encourage freshmen to start in on. There might be older students in that class who want to try it, but that is the class that we introduce our 9th graders to. But it is a full year. It is a full credit. The other ones that are half year, or you can take them for a full year, are those TV production classes that meet either for a fall term or a spring term. So the terms, just so that everybody has it, the first term goes September to January, and the second term goes February to June. So that's our first and second halves of the year.
Thank you. Ms. Bradley, could you talk a little bit about what study hall really means? And if a student doesn't opt for a study hall, is that period, filled with something else? Is that a period that they use to catch up on, studying for credit courses? Could you speak a little to that?
Sure. So study halls are, they're great for students to get homework done, and really kind of, meshes well with their education. So, but that being said, some students, don't use study halls wisely, they're playing games on their phones, and that's okay, that happens. But there are options to fill those periods with electives. So whether that's art, orchestra, computer essentials. So someone, this is an example, someone taking computer essentials, that's a full year course. They may want to get their art credit out of the way as well, or at least some of it. So then they may not end up with a study hall. So it's really whatever the student and the families decide is right for their student. Every student's so different. But it is a period to catch up, supposed to be a period to catch up on homework and get things done. Did that answer your question? If not, just let me know. I'm happy to explain a little more.
Did anybody else have anything to speak on the study hall?
I do. So we do encourage freshmen to at least try a study hall in the very beginning of the year, just to handle that adjustment. It is a non-credited course, but as Ms. Winston pointed out, you'll have at least 6 other credits in there. So it's not like you're going to be falling behind, or you're not going to be able to have enough towards the end of the year. We'll always work with you to make sure that you do have the right number of credits. Typically, it's about 6.5 in the first year. And that study hall is a really valuable opportunity to kind of work on learning those independent study skills. It is with a teacher. It is scheduled in the building. So it is not a roam around time. It's in a classroom. It's supervised. Attendance will be taken. And students are encouraged to use that time for study, for homework, for asking questions, for catching up on a missed test if needed, to go to the library and make some copies as they need, if they need access to that. So it's a great opportunity also just to have a little bit of downtime. Yes, it's very similar to that flex period. And I don't know how structured the flex is in the middle school. Ours is structured in that it can go at any point during the day. So study halls happen anywhere between periods 2 to period 8. So if a student has an open period, first period, they're welcome to come into the building. We typically don't have a study hall that period, but they can come in, have something to eat, or hang out in the library to get ready for the day.
Great.
Okay.
I'm just waiting a few minutes to see if there's any more questions that appear in the Q&A. I did want to remind everybody that next week on February 9th, we invite the parents back for our evening live presentation, which will be in the high school. That starts at 7 p.m., Mr. Palumbo? Okay, and are there tours prior to that? Maybe?
So our plan for that evening is we're going to have tours starting at 6 p.m. Those will take place. They'll begin right in front of the auditorium. Our evening program will begin in the auditorium at 7 p.m. We're going to have members of the administrative team. Ms. Connell will be there, our athletic director. We're going to give you an overview of the high school program. Then we're going to break the group up into 3 separate groups that will visit some different stations. After our station rotation, Mr. Fondi and I will host an extra innings session in the auditorium to answer any additional questions that folks may have. And then the following week, we'll be hosting an honors/dual enrollment evening, where we provide students in 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th grade and their families with information, about our honors offerings and our dual enrollment offerings.
Thank you. So I believe that concludes our program. Some of the information you'll continue to hear throughout the next couple of months. Most importantly, I do want to invite you to reach out and meet with your counselor if you would like to in the spring. Letters will be going home during our winter break, and it will share with you who your counselor is. At that time, you can call our office. Miss Mangieri is our office assistant, and she can happily schedule an appointment with one of the counselors, not only to review the recommendations that you've been given through the middle school teachers, but any questions you have regarding the high school experience, sports, music programs, activities, academic support, anything that you may have any questions about. And as Ms. Leiden said, we will get those students hooked up to their portal so they'll have an opportunity to see what those course recommendations are. I do want to just say one thing about recommendations. Each teacher makes their recommendation exclusive of another teacher. So, there's often times where you may find yourself being recommended for 5 or 6 very, high-end courses, either accelerated or honors. And that's wonderful. It does not mean, though, that you have to take advantage of every one of those opportunities. I think it's important to find those areas that the student enjoys the most, finds to be something relatively comfortable to take on an advanced or honors level, and not overwhelm themselves with too many courses that are going to really create a lot of stress and anxiety. The best part about high school is really getting a chance to explore different things, take on different clubs and service activities and leadership. And that is done through balance, as Ms. Leiden had spoken about earlier. So please consider those recommendations cautiously. And we, as I said, we look forward to having those conversations with everybody as the months unfold. And thank you so much for joining us. As I said, it will be recorded. It has been recorded, and it will be shared with everybody on YouTube. Thank you so much.